Hi, I'm josephrlewis, and I write adventures. And I'm currently writing an adventure. It's called The Lovely Jade Necropolis. And it's a large dungeon. It's pretty traditional in a lot of ways, but of course it's creepy and unusual in a lot of other ways. And I'm currently playtesting it. It's fully drafted, and I'm now in playtesting. I've been playtesting it for several weeks now. Last week, we played a session, and I discovered something that I'd written. Didn't turn out to be as good as I had hoped it was, and it needs to be fixed. So I want to talk about that. How do we fix things that we learn about that are not as good as they could have been from playtesting? So last week, my players discovered a new room. This was not a regular room with a door that was easy to find. They had to find a crack in a wall and work their way through the darkness to discover this hidden chamber. So far so good. Everything was working as intended. They had to be clever to do so. They worked their way through this narrow crack. There's gross sludge on the floor. There's strange sounds coming from up ahead. Everything was going well. The first PC arrives in the room. The room is dark. There's a single shaft of light. There's sludge on the floor. There's urns all around the room. And the creature person, the monster person, the mini-boss, is seen across the room in the shadows, just the outline. And they began to talk a little bit. So, still going well. But then the player moved further into the room. They tried to interact more with the mini-boss, the creature person, and it very quickly devolved into a combat-esque situation. The creature used one of its weird, gross abilities, and it was looking like the player was in big trouble. And then the player very cleverly used one of their magic items that they had recently found and escaped from this situation. Hats off to the player. The player did a great job. And they escaped. They separated from the creature. And then the other players arrived. And at that point, it pretty much turned into regular combat that you would have with any creature. Back and forth, 2 or 3 rounds, and then the creature was dead. And I had hoped for a lot more. This was supposed to be one of the bigger set pieces, bigger, more exciting encounters, better rooms. And it very quickly devolved into a regular room. And that's a problem. That's not what I wanted. So I need to fix that. The first question, though, is why did this go wrong? I'd gone through my regular process. I'd made up lots of ideas, big lists, big outlines, and I had arranged the best rooms and the best creatures, and then I had put this creature in this room, and I came up with a little bit of backstory and a situation. It seemed pretty good, and then I moved on. And that's the problem. I was in my process of creating a lot of regular rooms. There's over 100 locations in this adventure so far. And I had just written this room, like all rooms, like a regular room. I hadn't thought about beefing it up, making it more elaborate. I was just trying to spread out my rooms and spread out my ideas. And I forgot to make this one better. So I need to make this one better. First off, the creature has a lot of interesting things to say. They're interesting to interact with. A lot of my monsters are kind of talky. Because I want you to have opportunities for social encounters as well as just, an exciting combat. So the first problem is it was a little too easy for the monster to get pulled into doing combat. This creature is not just waiting around in a room to fight, although it is kind of stuck in that room. It's there because it's a prisoner. It has a backstory. It has a reason for being there. It knows secrets. So I think what I'll do is I'll change the creature's motivation a little bit. Originally, it was just starving, so obviously it wants to eat the first person that comes in the room, and that means combat. Instead, I want to encourage a social interaction, so maybe its first inclination should be to try to find or negotiate a way to escape from the room. So I think that will encourage more communication and social interaction before the combat probably inevitably kicks off. The next problem is this creature's alone, which means it's going to be a group of players fighting against one monster, and we all know how that tends to go. So I need more baddies on the baddie side. And the easiest way to do that would be to put some minions in this room. And at first it seems counterintuitive. This creature has been imprisoned here alone, but there are some obvious ways. There's this sludge stuff on the floor that can come alive and be interactive. There are these urns around the room. There could be something in these urns. There could also be minions on her person, which I think is the coolest option. That's what I'm going to go with. So in the next iteration, there will be more creatures to interact with and fight, which will make the combat more dynamic and interesting. In addition to having more people and things in the room to interact with or fight with, the room itself should be more interactive or dangerous. The environment should be compelling and a challenge for the players to deal with. So I think the sludge on the floor is the best way to create a new challenge. Instead of just being slippery or sticky, it should be somewhat alive. So maybe sticky tendrils can grab at the players maybe once a round. And if they fail at a save or whatever mechanic I come up with, they can get knocked down, they can get cocooned, and they can get dragged towards the mini-boss where more awful things await them. So I think that's a way to make the environment a little more dynamic and dangerous, something for them to think about and interact with or escape from during this encounter. The next thing that I want to do to make this encounter or room more interactive and interesting is to make the room literally interactive. There should be something for the players to do. It would be neat if there were switches and things I could turn on fire and water, but that wouldn't make a lot of sense. But what there are, in addition to the sludge on the floor, there are these urns on the floor. So I'm thinking perhaps the sludge, they could set it on fire as a way to interact with the floor and to reveal spaces on the floor or make areas safe. They could also pick up lobs of this sludge and throw it, maybe as a weapon or to encumber their enemies. There's also the urns. Currently, there's something in the urns. I don't want to spoil that. But there could be something else in the urns, something more interactive, something that they could take out and use, or they could just be throwing the urns themselves. There's also a hidden weapon in this room that my players haven't found yet. We're about to pick up the game again tonight. Maybe that weapon should be more obvious. Maybe they can look up and see it dangling from a thread from the ceiling and go, oh, maybe we should be trying to get that weapon during the combat as a way to coup de grace the enemy. That would give them something else to focus on, make the interactive element more obvious, give them something else to do or focus on during this combat. So whatever I do exactly, I'll be transforming this room and this encounter to be much more dramatic and complex. Instead of a group of heroes just attacking one creature, there'll be an environment to deal with, there will be minions to deal with, there will be other options for things to interact with in the room that will make the whole set piece take a little longer, be more interesting, give them more challenges, give them more options, give them more choices to make, which I think will make it much more memorable and exciting and probably deadly. And of course, now that I've realized that my big encounter room turned out to be a regular encounter room, this is probably a problem throughout the adventure, so I don't need to wait for my players to find the other big encounter rooms or the mini bosses. I can go ahead and find those right now in my draft and start bumping them up in the exact same way. Give some of those mini bosses some minions, make the environment more interactive, make the environment more dangerous, and find other ways to make those set pieces bigger set pieces so they stand out more. So that's my adventure writing lesson of the week. Sometimes the very cool things that we've pictured in our heads just don't make it onto the page for whatever reason. We leave things out. We focus on the wrong thing. We just forget. But that's okay. That's just part of being human and making mistakes. And the great part about testing things is that we can find those mistakes and fix them and make our adventures even better. So that's all for now. So good luck out there.